Welcome to the Create Your Happy podcast, where conscious female creators come together with a shared vision to inspire and empower women as they learn how to fully embrace their humanness, find their unique voice, and collaborate on how together we can change the world. I'm your host, Christy Holt, happiness coach and conscious funpreneur on a mission to change the world one beautiful soul at a time. All right, gorgeous, it's time to get curious and become inspired. It's time to create your happy. Welcome to the show. I have today with us the lovely Jacqueline Elizabeth. I want to call her Jacqueline because I'm kind of silly like that. And some of you will get that reference, but I want to welcome you to the show, Jacqueline. Jacqueline is a corporate dropout turned trauma-informed embodiment coach and business mentor. She uses a holistic approach to guide purpose-driven female entrepreneurs as they get to the very root of their self-sabotage as they rebuild self-trust in their business. Welcome to the show, Jacqueline. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I'd love to kick off this episode with an opportunity for you to share a little bit about your stories of overcoming and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you, Christy, for having me on this podcast and the show. I'm really, really excited to be having this conversation with you.
Yeah.
So I guess I really, really resonated with the storyline of Create Your Happy. That's been something that I've focused on a lot, especially in the last 4 to 5 years. I'd say probably around my Saturn return time frame in life, it really was like a light switch for me. But it really kicked off when I was about 16. I was diagnosed with endometriosis around that time frame and had been struggling for a number of years with medication and in chronic pain on an 8 or 9 on the pain scale for pretty much every day. And going through that process of having to advocate for myself, learn how to advocate for myself, and decide that even if this is how my life is going to be forever, that I still get to choose how I show up. I still get to choose the things that I'm going to do and how my life is going to be defined. And through that process, there was a lot of growth. There was a lot of struggle. But the thing that really struck me was once I had made that decision, once I had come to the acceptance of this is my life and stopped fighting just the why me and the victimhood of my situation, my circumstances, there was so much happiness that just flowed from that every sort of decision ended up fitting like a puzzle piece. It was like once I made that one decision that I'm not going to let this define the rest of my life, even if the pain is going to be with me the rest of my life, that every decision that came forward was just like a stone laid in my path. I know that we've probably talked about similar things where you make one decision and the next one just sort of falls right in front of you. And the thing that you didn't even know you were looking for comes to you. And so that was sort of my journey until for 10 years after that. And then I became full on pain free. So I've been pain free for over 12 years now. And I've been med free for almost a year, which is insane for someone who was told that would never happen. And so that in of itself, I created my own happy. And that became my new baseline. And so once that became my new baseline, it was well, who the heck am I without the pain? Who the heck am I without all of this baggage that I had been expecting to carry around for my entire life? And there was a marriage and there was a divorce and, all of this rebirth and renewal again around that Saturn return time frame, 27 to 29. And when I hit 29, my 29th birthday, I was in full on crisis mode. I was divorced. I was about to turn 30. I had 2 cats, no kids, and starting over. And I remember being at a club with my cousin and her sister-in-law and just being what am I going to do with my life? And throwing up at midnight. It was this purging of my 20s and stepping into my 30s. And it was in that moment that I was I get to make the same decision. I get to decide in this moment that none of that is going to define how I show up for the rest of my life. And so it was really this big exploration that happened over the next couple of years. And that really meant re-examining corporate life because at that time I had worked my butt off from kindergarten. I went to kindergarten in a three-piece suit with a backpack that looked like a briefcase. Okay. Like I was a driven kid who was like, I'm going to law school. This is going to happen. Fourth grade, filling out scholarship applications, figuring out how to get into law school. Like that was the dream. And I never thought that I could do it because of my condition and all of the side effects that came with that. Having gone through that, having gone to law school, having did the thing, it's like, but what's next? Like, who am I? And around the time of graduation is when all of this stuff is coming to the surface, all of this change, all of this like reawakening and rebirth. And I got to the other side and I had an amazing corporate job at a company I thought I was going to be at for the next 30 to 40 years. And then
there's always an end then.
And then I turned 30 and I'm like, is this really like what I want to be doing? And my boss was really the catalyst for that conversation. I mean, he had been so supportive through my divorce and through all of the change that was going on around, really creating a lot of stability. He was the first person that asked me, what do you want from your life? And I'm like, I'm 30 years old and I don't think anyone has ever asked me that question.
Right. It's not something we're really like taught to question.
No.
Right.
It's like, I will go to law school. I will do the thing. My grandmother went to 3 different colleges. She like was very well educated. Her father was a very prominent lawyer. On my other side of my family, pharmacy and like very educated people, but my parents didn't go to college. My dad went to trade school. My mom didn't even go to college until after I was born. So sort of like this weird in between gap thing where they were kind of like, you're going to school, you're going to college, like figure out what that is. And yet there was all this pressure. And I had always felt so drawn to the legal community because I was loud. I was often called too much. I was this big personality. I was talkative. I was stubborn. Yeah. I really enjoyed, arguing my point. And I felt accepted.
I'm not going to lie. My mom also told me that maybe I should be a lawyer because I was also had some argumentative tendencies. That's not a bad thing, is it?
Bad thing.
What we want.
No, I feel like that's why we get along really well is because I feel like very kindred spirity with you. Like, and that was the thing. It was like all the reasons why I was feeling isolated in my own family, in my own community, the things that I'm getting told are quote unquote wrong, or like I need to dim down, tone down, are the same things that are getting celebrated in this profession.
Yeah.
And so as early on as kindergarten, I saw that and I was like, okay, those are my people. That's where I'm going. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then I get there and I'm like, yeah, you people are really cool. Like I jive with you. And I don't know that this is really what I want to do with my life. Like I love the impact, but I also see how burnout, like I was a hustle for your worth kind of gal, people pleaser to the max. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it was nobody asked like what I really wanted. I just was in survival mode. Being a lawyer was the way that I was going to survive, the way that I was going to find community, the way that I was going to make an impact in the world and really connect with people.
Yeah, of course.
And I loved the connection part, and I got a lot of that in my corporate job, right? So being a lawyer in the corporate world is a little bit different than, being in litigation and those sorts of things. And I enjoyed the community. But when he asked me, okay, what is it that you need? What is it that you desire? Where do you want to be in 5 years? My answer was always law school, graduating law school. And then now that's not my answer anymore. How do I fill in that gap? And I was like, honestly, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah. Well, it's not something that we often think about. And especially once we're gone down a career track, we're not taught to keep questioning. And in fact, actually was talking about this on an earlier podcast episode, I think, or with someone in recent conversation, but about how even the younger generations do a lot of different jobs and they try it and they quit and they try it and they quit. And maybe they have it right. Maybe Gen Z with the trial and the error and the something else and they try this thing. Nope, didn't work. Let's try that thing. Maybe they have it right. And really the rest of us are holding on to something because we think that's what we're fucking supposed to do, because that people pleasing, that the expectations are just, they're just like weighing so heavy. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that that's a lot of, so I always knew that I was going to law school, right? But it also scared the crap out of me to get there, because once I got there, what was I going to have left? And so I fought it for a long time. My undergraduate degree are in art history, studio art, and I had a minor in chemistry and Spanish. I was
really all over.
Art world. I was in the art world. I was learning to be I was an apprentice learning how to restore artwork. And I did that for a number of years. And it was like, well, I really like things that are pretty and I like making them pretty. And I love art. And I'm just going to do this for like now, because I'm always going to law school. But like, I want to do this and have fun first.
Sure.
And then I was like, okay, I got to a point in my career with that I couldn't master one skill. And if you can't master that one skill, then you're kind of screwed in that profession. So I was like, okay, can't go very far here. And so I taught English as a second language for a number of years and did that. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to go to law school now that I have my master's and I can live anywhere in the world that I want to live and I can have a job and I've got my stability, because you should always have job stability.
Yes, you should.
And I was like, okay, well, I love the kids. I love the impact that has, but also you get very cynical when you go into education. And I got really burnt out by the administration and all of the impact that I couldn't make. So when I was like, all right, I'm going to law school, I'm going to do education reform, I'm going to do legislation, and I'm going to do all these things. So it's like taking all the passion that I've learned, bringing it forward into like this legal career. And then I'm like, maybe I don't want to do that. That doesn't make me happy either, because all those people are just rewriting. I'm not actually making the impact that I desire to be making. And so once he asked me that question, I was like, you know what? I think I need a leave of absence. I need to figure this out. And at the time, I didn't feel safe enough to actually say why. I was like, I'm going to study for the bar and I need to take the bar class. And this is something that I should be doing. And I did want to pass the bar and I did want to take the bar because I wanted to close that door.
Yeah.
So I took the leave of absence and I'm going through the motions of studying my butt off. And at the same time, I meet this woman in this random Facebook group that has nothing to do with business. And I'm like, I love what you're talking about here. Like, let me see what this is about.
Yeah.
And I had already been mentoring women with endometriosis at the time, sort of just in a creating your own environment Facebook group, like mentorship deal, but not formally coaching because I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
So I take my leave of absence and I sign up for a business coach. And I'm like, I need to figure out what this is.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can combine all of my interests and all of the impact and make the biggest impact on all of these women. I can take my legal expertise in contracts and negotiation. I can teach people how to advocate for themselves. I can teach them how to build their business in a really, really simplified, inexpensive way. And the people who want to make the impact, I want to be helping those people make their impact. And then by that, it's the ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
So it's like all of the things that I've done up until this point, which you look at my resume, you think maybe I'm a little manic, but then you see the thread and it all connects together, leading me to
multipassionate.
Exactly.
Yes. I am the same.
It's a positive.
I have had a few like seemingly wildly different career, I don't even know what to call them, totally different careers. Honestly, I started as a piano teacher. Then I have a business degree, became a professional accountant. I taught accounting at a post-secondary educational level. Then I was a fitness instructor and personal trainer and health coach, nutrition coaching. Yeah. It's really kind of been on this whole journey. And it's interesting because, let's be honest, all of those things, as well as my 2 divorces and all of the other side personal stuff, having kids and all of these things all connect to create the person I am today, who is very multi-passionate. And I still teach piano, and I'm grateful that I know some accounting and I don't have to pay an accountant. I can just do my own books, right? So there's some things. And, you know, the skills that I learned mostly from the accounting thing that really contributed to this is the coaching side and the mentoring and the training. So it's interesting how, though we might be very multi-passionate, have all of these sort of different, completely unrelated, quote unquote, areas of expertise, they connect somewhere along the way. And it's honestly, it's a beautiful thing when you're like, put it all together and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, this is why I had to do all of those things. And here we are today, making it come together.
Exactly. And that was like the moment that everything clicked, was in that business coaching situation where I was going through a program with 9 other people and we were building this thing. And I was like, I get to decide, I get to make all the decisions. And that was like really exciting and really overwhelming at the same time. It's like, I'm really good at wearing 1 hat or 3 hats and being like that person that just picks up all the balls that are dropping in the workplace, you know? But to wear all the hats all the time was a little bit of a shock. So even then I had to really be conscious of asking myself that question all the time. What is it that you really want? And keep coming back to that question. What is it that you really want? How can we get there? And being okay with not knowing the how, but just being able to take action. So that takes me to December of last year, where I quit my 9 to 5 without having my business superseding my corporate salary. And I got to that point where around Labor Day, where I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I have no idea what I'm going to do. But I know that I can't do this anymore and feel good about it. Because if I do stay, then I'm not going to leave. And I can't do that now, knowing what I know about the other side, about what it's like to be in the coaching chair, to be in the entrepreneurial chair. I can't in good faith stay here any longer. And so timing, Mother Nature, Lord, Goddess above, whoever you pray to, like she had divine timing. And it was just this perfect storm of circumstances at my job that made it okay for me to say, I need to step away. And it was unplanned. I was the girl who quits her job and moves across the country. And I've never been happier. That's the like craziest thing. Type A personality, people pleaser. And yet here I am, having advocated for myself to take this leap, even though I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how I was going to make it work. And now I'm the absolute happiest I've ever been in my entire life. My heart is full on a daily basis. And I never could have imagined a life anywhere close to this, let alone as good as it is.
Right. And I think that ultimately, when we take a look at the big picture, if we look at the impact that we want to create, and like you said, we don't need to know all of the steps. And in fact, what I've discovered through multiple times of trial and error is the more I try and nail all that down, the more everything falls apart. So it is not about knowing everything. It is not about being prepared for all of the possibilities. It is having the end goal, the impact that you want to create in mind, and taking aligned action, one step at a time towards that, right? And then navigating, I don't know, all the shoulds and the expectations and everything of everyone else. That's a whole nother side thing, and our own shoulds. You know, I shit all over myself all the time, and you know, like, oh my gosh, letting go of those expectations can be a real challenge.
And that's why I think I stayed for so long, because, and I hear this all the time, right? Is like, well, if you know that this is really what you want to be doing, then why aren't you doing it? And I ask that of my clients, and they're like, well, I can't. Okay, but why? It's like, well, my family or my parents, or, well, I couldn't just leave my corporate job safety and go into business for myself. That's unstable. It's like, is it? Or is that a should and a story that we've heard over and over from the people that love us and support us and don't even sometimes know that that's the story that they're pushing?
Yeah.
Or is this an internal story that we've fed ourselves to keep ourselves safe? And how can we look at the same set of circumstances and see something different? How can we see the opportunity here for growth, for happiness, for even greater joy? And even if it doesn't work out, which I'm someone who now no longer subscribes to the belief of success or failure, it's just information, it's just steps
Learning.
along the way.
Yep.
And that is probably the number one thing that has helped. But it took a long time for me to get over and letting go of the shoulds, mostly of my loved ones, right? My mom, my dad, my family, and honestly, my bosses and the people at work and the family that I had cultivated there. And I knew that if I left, there would be a gap. And I also knew that I'm just a number, right? It's corporate. They're going to fill me with someone. They're not going to be as good as me, but
Yeah,
they're going to fill them with someone. They're
Yeah.
going to fill them with someone. And it's like, who can I do that for myself? Can I replace me in my life? No, I have to show up for me. I'm not a number for me. And so, what is that next aligned action? And how do I take that next step?
Right. And that comes back to, I think, the self-sabotage and the self-trust, right? Because we tend to should on ourselves. We
Mm-hmm.
we either accept expectations from other people or build up our own. And often it's built on, I don't know, societal ideas or wanting to make other people happy, and frankly, all of that has to just do with our perception of all of the things. So we'll be real
Yes.
clear about that. That if we shift our perception about some of those beliefs and thoughts and ideals, we can get ourselves out of self-sabotage and start going after what we want. We need to have that self-trust before we take that leap, right? So what advice would you give to someone who's stuck in a 9 to 5? Maybe they're kind of stuck there, waiting for, they got the golden handcuffs, as they say, waiting for retirement. It's just 14 more years. It's going to be fine. Uh, what advice would you have for someone who's maybe not loving it there?
So I hear this a lot. A lot of my clients are people that I've worked with in the past in former lives, whether in corporate or small business. And the biggest question that I ask them first is like, if everything were going right at your job, would you still want to stay? Because for I'd say it's been 50-50 or like 60-40
Yeah,
split is like the people who want to stay are just unhappy about circumstances
sure.
and some things that they're, perception or
Yeah,
things that they can't change. They're not within their control. And so then it's about shifting that and looking at it differently and asking, getting curious. That's one of my core beliefs within my business, but also within myself. And it's been a huge game changer. So just looking at things with curiosity and leaving the judgment at the door. And so getting clear as, do you want to stay? Number one, like deep down, do you really want to stay at this job and make the best of it and really start to love your job again? Because you can do that. Even if
yeah,
nothing at your job changes, we can work together to get
absolutely.
you to a place to where
Yeah,
you love it again. Right. If you say, even if everything were going right, I don't really love being here and I would rather be doing something else. Okay, well, what does that look like? Dream world, close your eyes,
yeah.
sky's the limit. You're making $1 million a day. What would you be doing?
Right. And this is a hard
Right.
question for a lot of people to answer because they
A
often haven't
lot of
allowed
people.
they haven't allowed themselves any space to even consider it. So
Nope. Nope.
I'm often met when I ask this question with like a blank stare.
Hmm. I asked my parents the same question. And my mom was like, well, gardening. We're like, okay, well, that was fast. Like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
aren't why are you in tech again? If really what you want to be doing is out in the garden. And my dad, I asked him this question probably 2.5 years ago, and he still does not have an answer.
Yeah.
And it's such a wonderful reminder of the time that they grew up in and like their own personal history with that. My dad's the youngest of five children, four boys, one girl, and nobody really had a say in what they did. His sister took over the family business, which was pharmacy, and all the brothers, they went into the military. And then after the military, it was quote unquote up to them to figure it out. And it's, on the one hand, I feel like so privileged to have gone through and reincarnated at this point in time in life,
Yeah.
because there's so much opportunity and responsibility as a millennial and being in this time on really the cusp of things changing and shifting. And also this beautiful opportunity to open the eyes of those that have come before and maybe not haven't really looked up from their desk or up from their blinders, taken them off and kind of seen what's going on and really start asking these questions. Because when I started asking these questions and not even really talking about it with my family has already picked up on that and started opening their horizons and starting to ask their questions, and personal development and all these things start to ripple, even though there's no direct, conversation being had per se. And when we think about where we're at and where we're going, there wasn't an opportunity earlier in time to really ask that question, because it was all about stability. It was, you get a job that pays well and job security so that your family doesn't starve. And it's literally about survival and
Survival mode.
preservation.
Yep.
Yeah. And so now we're at this place where like the internet exists and we can work remotely, and there are an abundance of ways that we can be making money and supporting ourselves. And so that essential nature of a job has sort of shifted into desire. And my parents did a wonderful job under their circumstances to really ask me, like, what do you want to go to school for? Not really offering up any other choices, but also being open and supporting whatever I chose, which, from the age of 5, it was, I'm going to law school.
Right.
but but they were supportive of that and did their best to not cringe when I told them I was changing majors and going into art, and trying not to cringe when I didn't end up getting into a law firm, and not trying not to cringe when I told them I was quitting my job. Like, they are doing their best to be supportive, but I also forget that they didn't get asked what they wanted ever.
Right.
They just were in survival mode to make sure that they could support themselves and support their family. And it's a gift, I think, and something that I take for granted a little too often.
Yeah.
And that Gen Z and later generations probably will not even come up on their radar as, something to consider, is like, we are so privileged to have the opportunity to really ask ourselves and ask others,
Yeah.
what is it that you really want out of life?
And what sort of path is aligned with your heart's desires, your skills, the impact you want to create, and then bringing that all together, right? We talk a lot about alignment, and I'm not sure, I'm going to throw the question at you to just share with your listeners, what does alignment look like or feel like in your world? Because I think it can be a little bit vague, and people are like, well, I don't really know what the fuck does aligned even mean? And, my idea here is it's not a single narrow path. It's sort of swinging from one side to another, but not getting too wildly out of touch with sort of those central themes. But how would you explain what aligned looks or feels like?
I love this question. I think aligned is one of those words that get tossed around a lot. Right. Like, I'm not very good with remembering phrases. For those of you who know me, you'll laugh at this like moment of fogginess around the phraseology. But, one of those words that we toss out and we overuse, and without really thinking about the meaning behind it. And so For me, alignment is really getting clear on what your core desire, your core value is. What is that core goal? So let's just take the earlier stages of my life, which was law school. And then thinking about, okay, in wherever you are now, what is the next best step that I can make in this situation? So even if it's going to the grocery store and you're choosing between two brands of milk,
Right.
in this situation that you're in, what's the best decision that you can make that's going to get you closer to that goal? And it might seem unrelated, the choice of milk brand to becoming a lawyer. But if you think about it, each brand has a representation,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They stand for something. They stand for quality, organics, farm grown, farm raised. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's GMO. Maybe it's the cheapest option. Maybe it's the most expensive option. Like whatever it is, there's more to that choice than just the face value. And so, really looking at what are your options and which one is going to get you closer and stay closest to that core value, that core goal, and just taking one step at a time. So choosing the milk of the brand that represents who you are, not necessarily if like price is not my biggest priority, right? It's going to be aligning myself with quality brands. So organic whenever possible, non-GMO whenever possible. If I can go out and milk the goat or the cow myself or squeeze the almonds, like I'm going to go do that.
Yeah.
And that's a choice that I'm making, but it's also telling the universe, if you believe in that, which I do, or telling God, hey, this is what I value. And here's how you can see this thread of values through every
Right.
single decision that I make. And so, yes, some decisions I'm going to swing a little bit to the left, and sometimes I'm going to swing a little bit to the right of that straight line, like you were talking about, but always keeping in mind in your awareness, asking yourself, okay, I need to buy groceries today. My end goal is to become a lawyer. How is the how is this going to get me closer to there, or what decision is going to get me closer to there? And so I think it's not necessarily about, knowing outside of this one decision what comes next. It's just what's the answer for this current situation and taking one step at a time and moving towards that goal.
Yeah. And not getting bogged down by all of the decisions at once, just
Yes,
one baby
one.
step at a time, because otherwise it gets so fucking
Too overwhelming.
overwhelming. And then, we end up kind of
Inaction.
paralyzed in that state of inaction, completely fucking stuck. Right.
Yep.
So I would love for
Self-sabotage
you.
kicks in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I would love for you to share a little bit about what you are working on, what you're most excited about, what your current passion projects are, whatever that looks like for you right now.
Ooh, okay. So personally, something big is brewing. I am moving abroad this year.
Oh, so
It is
exciting.
something that I have wanted my entire life. My first trip abroad was when I was 16. I never felt part of my community, my hometown, even my like nuclear family. I never really felt like part of.
Yeah.
My brother, thankfully, like I gave him all of that. But when I went to Spain for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, the language, the culture, like Europe in general, and going and living abroad for shorter periods of time has been part of my life, but not anything permanent, even though that was my number one goal from when I
Yeah.
was 18. I was like, this is something I need to do. So, on the path to creating my happy, I'm biting the bullet and moving abroad. So, I'm taking a house hunting trip in June to Portugal to go find my next home for the next 12 months, which is really exciting. And it's the most beautiful thing that I never thought I would have the courage to do. So that's personally, I'm really excited about. And with all of that comes a launch to a program called Unshakable, which is a one-on-one program. It is 4 months long and it's all about rebuilding that self-trust. So getting to the root of self-sabotage, rebuilding the self-trust so that you can become unshakable in all the things that you're doing. And following that path, being okay with not knowing all the steps, letting go
Yeah.
of the people pleasing, letting go of the perfectionism, and really healing the root cause, so that when you're moving forward, you don't have to worry about it. You just know that you trust yourself, you trust the signals, you trust the communication that's coming into you, and you can move forward with ease and grace.
And when you have that self-trust, then you are better able to discern fear versus excitement, because you know the direction you're going. You don't know the steps. You don't need to know every single step and every detail, but you know the direction you're going. And so if you're stepping in that direction and fear comes up, because our brains are fucking wired to protect us and keep us safe. So our perceived safety mechanism, if you will kick in, and you can interpret that as fear or excitement. And if you don't know where you're going, that can get really confusing. But if you have that self-trust and you know where you are headed, then you're going to see that as excitement, because it's going towards that thing that you're working towards. So amazing.
Exactly.
Where can our listeners find you?
So JacquelineElizabeth.com, and all the links I think you're going to be putting in the show notes, but XO Jacqueline Elizabeth, XO on Instagram. And yeah, from there you can find my podcast, which is Trust Your Magic, all good things about trusting yourself, rebuilding that, and combating self-sabotage.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's it. You can find me mostly on Instagram. And my website will give you just a general overview of what's going on.
Sweet. All right. I want to wrap up with one final question for you. I would love for you to share one way or one tip, hack, idea, whatever you want to share, that our listeners can get out there and create more happy today.
Okay. So I'm going to give a practical tip. This is something you can do anywhere you are.
Excellent.
You need anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes probably to do this. And so you also need some place to stand up. So sitting down, wait until you can stand up. So this is a little exercise that is really, really good at checking in and connecting with your intuition very, very quickly, even if it's not something that you feel like you have developed, right? Like there are a lot of people who are like, I don't know what my intuition sounds like. You don't need to know this. Your body's going to tell you. So you start by standing up and you say one true statement. So my name is Jacqueline Elizabeth, and you wait. You're going to notice that your body's going to move in a particular direction. Then, once you notice what that direction is, you say a false statement. So, my name is Sean, for example. Your body's going to move in a different direction. So now you have your baseline. Then you ask the question that you're really desiring answers to, and asking it in a yes or no fashion. This will align with the true or false movement of your body. So this is really, really good if you are just absolutely stuck. Do I buy Hood Milk or the Wegmans brand, right? Yeah. Your intuition is going to kick in, and your body is going to tell you via movement. And so really asking yourself every single time the true statement and the false statement first as the baseline, because your movements can change. So one time when you ask the question, maybe you lean forward for the true and back for the false. One time, maybe you move back for the true and forward for the false. So always setting that baseline first.
Yeah, makes sense.
Starting with a true statement, following by a false statement, and then asking your true or false or yes or no question that you're really trying to get clarity on. And then that at least tells you where your intuition is leaning. And then you can go from there. And you can ask these in like a series of questions. So I really encourage people to think about what is the ultimate goal that you're getting to? And if that's not a yes or no question, then kind of working your way back through a series of yes or no's to get to that answer. And that can be really, really powerful. And again, it takes 30 seconds to 2 minutes to set the baseline, ask the question, and then move on. So a really, really powerful tool that you can use starting today.
That is awesome. Absolutely awesome. And I think, when we can actually tap into our intuition so if anybody's listening and is like, I don't really have much intuition, I don't know how to feel or hear into my intuition, this is a great way to start learning.
Exactly.
Because when you can start to tap into that and really trust in that, magical things are going to start happening because we are energy. And our bodies
Mhm.
are all that energy, and the energy knows. It's
The
like
body
magical.
knows.
It's like, it sounds woo woo, but it's honestly, it's just the fact of the matter is, scientifically we are made of energy, and the
Mhm.
energy, it knows, right? So
Yep.
thank you so much for sharing that amazing tip. I hope that our
You're
listeners are
welcome.
going to try that one out as soon as they have a chance.
Yeah, if you do, let me know. Slide into my DMs and let me know how it worked, what you liked, what you didn't like, and I would love to have that conversation. Some of them are really, really powerful.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I have loved this conversation. As always, thanks for coming and thanks for sharing your time with me.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. I trust you were inspired to take back your power and create your happy. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with women in your life who could use a little extra inspiration today. If you'd like to connect with myself and or today's guest, you can find those details in the show notes. We would love to hear from you. If you've got an inspiring story to share, you can also apply to be a guest on the show at createyourhappy.ca. As always, get out there, have fun, be you, and create your happy.